Single mom was turned away at the ER. Then a quiet doctor stepped in. Rain slammed against the side of the bus as it pulled up to Harborview General Hospital, the last run of the night. When the doors folded open with a tired wheeze, cold air rushed inside. Sara Lane stepped down carefully, one arm wrapped under her 5-year-old daughter's legs, the other bracing her back. Mia's forehead pressed against her shoulder, burning with fever, her breaths thin and whistling as if squeezed through a straw. The little girl's fingers clung weakly to a gray stuffed bunny damp from the storm. "Almost there, sweetheart," Sara whispered, hitching her daughter higher as rain hit her face like pins. The red emergency sign glowed above the sliding doors, a beacon she prayed would mean help. 3 days earlier, it was only a stubborn cough. Then came the wheezing fits. The inhaler in their bathroom cabinet was old, but usually enough. Tonight, it barely made a difference. When Mia woke gasping, clutching her chest, Sara didn't think about the overdue rent notice, the empty fridge, or the letter she'd shoved into a drawer. The letter that said her insurance had lapsed after the diner where she worked closed. She only grabbed the inhaler, the bunny, and ran into the rain to catch the last bus. Inside the ER, fluorescent lights buzzed over rows of plastic chairs. The air smelled of disinfectant and stale coffee. Sara hurried to the admitting desk, shoes squeaking on the wet floor. A nurse in navy scrubs looked up, her badge reading Jenkins. "My daughter can't breathe," Sara said, breathless. "Please, she needs help." Jenkins glanced at Mia, blue tinge at the lips, shallow breaths, shoulders heaving too hard for someone so small. Concern flickered across her face, but her hands moved to the keyboard. "I need your insurance and ID." Sara pulled out a cracked wallet, fingers shaking, and slid the insurance card forward. "It should still be active. I lost my job last month, but..." A red notice flashed on Jenkins' screen. Her mouth tightened. "This plan was terminated. Do you have other insurance?" The floor seemed to tilt. Sara remembered the letter she couldn't bring herself to open fully. "No," she whispered. "But she can't breathe." "Please." A man in a rumpled shirt stepped forward, holding a clipboard. "Moore. Admissions." "Before treatment," he said, flipping the page toward her, "you'll need to sign this financial responsibility form. These are estimated charges." Sara stared at the columns of numbers. Even the smallest amounts were impossible. Rent already gobbled every dollar from the part-time cleaning job she had managed to pick up. "I can't pay this," she said, voice cracking. "Some weeks we barely cover food." "There's a free clinic 3 blocks east," Moore said gently. "They open at 8 a.m. They take walk-ins." "8?" Sara's voice rose, panic breaking through. She turned Mia slightly, so they could see how her ribs pulled in with each breath. "She can't breathe now." Jenkins shifted uncomfortably, but Moore tapped the clipboard again. "If you sign, we can treat her. If you can't..." His unfinished sentence felt like a door sliding shut. At that moment, footsteps echoed down the hall. A tall man in a white coat passed by reading a tablet, badge catching the light. "Dr. Noah Carter. Emergency medicine." As he neared, the whistle of Mia's breathing cut through the background noise. His eyes lifted briefly, taking in Sara's tear-streaked face, the gasping child, the unsigned form. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, concern, before he kept walking toward the trauma rooms. "Mommy," Mia rasped, Bunny slipping from her grasp. "It hurts." The sound cracked something inside Sara. She looked at the clipboard, at the numbers she'd never be able to pay, and slowly let the pen fall from her fingers. "I can't sign," she whispered. Moore retrieved the form with a practiced motion. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The clinic opens at 8. Keep her warm. Use the inhaler if you have one." The world blurred. Sara clutched Mia tight and stepped backward. The sliding doors opened with a cold gust, rain blowing onto her face as if the night itself were pushing her out. No one stopped her. No one called after her. The doors closed behind them with a soft mechanical sigh, and the glowing emergency sign flickered above. No longer a promise, only a reminder of the help she couldn't reach. The moment the sliding doors closed behind her, The storm swallowed every trace of warmth. Rain hammered the sidewalk in relentless sheets, soaking through Sara's thin coat in seconds. She stumbled toward the narrow metal awning on the side of the building, clutching Mia against her chest. The weak shelter barely kept the water off them, but it was better than nothing. She slid down with her back against the cold wall until she was sitting on the wet concrete, heart pounding. Mia lay limp against her, breaths coming fast and shallow. Each inhale made a thin squeaking sound, like air squeezing through a straw that was almost pinched shut. Her little fingers searched weakly for the stuffed bunny, and Sara guided it into her hand. Okay, baby, we're taking a break," Sara whispered, though her voice shook. She brushed rain-speckled hair off Mia's forehead and reached into her bag for the old inhaler. The blue plastic felt slippery in her trembling hands. "Big breath, sweet girl. Just like before," Mia tried. The medicine hissed as Sara pressed the canister, but the breath that followed barely moved her chest. The wheeze afterward was sharper, more desperate. "It hurts, Mommy," Mia whispered, her voice thin as paper. A fresh wave of guilt crashed over Sara. "I know, baby. I'm so sorry. Mama's right here." She curled her body around her daughter, shielding her from the rain even though her own clothes were already soaked through. Across the street, a bus rumbled past, sending up a wave of cold water. The free clinic 3 blocks away sat dark behind locked metal grates. The thought of waiting there in the storm until sunrise felt impossible. Inside the ER, Noah Carter washed his hands in the staff sink, trying to scrub away the memory of a case he'd just finished. But another sound wouldn't leave his mind. The strained, high whistle he'd heard at the admitting desk. A mother's trembling voice, a child clinging to a bunny, a clipboard he recognized too well. He dried his hands and stepped into the hallway. "Where's the little girl who was wheezing at triage?" he asked Nurse Jenkins, who had just walked by. Jenkins hesitated. Her mom wouldn't sign the financial form. Moore told her about the free clinic. They left. "In the storm?" Noah asked, disbelief sharpening his tone. "You saw the email," Jenkins said quietly. "Admin says the emergency charity fund is almost out. We're supposed to be strict." Noah's jaw clenched. Memories he hated pressed against his ribs. His younger brother Daniel on a stretcher, gasping. Adults arguing about authorization while precious minutes slipped away. By the time someone bent the rules, it had been too late. He wouldn't stand by and watch it happen again. Not tonight. Noah strode to the admitting desk, yanked open the drawer, and grabbed a bright orange form labeled Emergency Charity Fund. Life-threatening only. He checked the box marked No Delay and signed his name in a firm stroke. Jenkins watched with wide eyes but said nothing. He grabbed a portable pulse oximeter from the wall hook and pushed through the ER doors into the rain. Outside, the cold air slapped him, soaking the shoulders of his white coat within seconds. He spotted them instantly. Sara hunched under the narrow awning, Mia curled in her lap, both drenched. Sara startled when he crouched in front of them, rain dripping from his hair. "Miss Lane?" he said gently. "I'm Dr. Noah Carter. I saw you inside." Her eyes widened in confusion and fear. "They said I had to sign. I can't promise money I don't have." I didn't know what to do. Noah nodded, clipping the oximeter onto Mia's tiny finger. The numbers flashed dangerously low. He met Sara's eyes with urgency. "Your daughter is in severe respiratory distress. Waiting until morning is not safe. She needs oxygen and medicine now." Tears welled in Sara's eyes. "But I can't sign that form." "I'm not asking you to," Noah said. He held up the orange document. Rain dotted the ink. "I signed this. It admits her under the emergency fund. She gets treated now. Billing can yell at me later." Sara blinked, stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because she's running out of air," he said simply. "And I won't let her fight alone." Mia whimpered softly, her breaths fluttering like a broken bird's wings. That was enough. Sara tightened her grip around her daughter and let out a shaking exhale. "Please, help her." "Come on," Noah said, rising and extending an arm to steady her. "We're going back inside." As they stepped toward the glowing doors together, the red emergency sign flickered above them. But now, for the first time that night, it felt like a door opening instead of closing. The ER doors slid shut behind them, sealing out the storm. Warm fluorescent light flooded over Sara and Mia as Noah guided them quickly toward an open treatment bay. Nurse Jenkins appeared almost instantly, pushing a gurney. "Let's get her on," Noah said, his voice calm but quick. Sara laid Mia on the thin mattress, her tiny chest rising and falling too fast, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. Jenkins snapped up the side rails and wheeled the bed toward a curtained bay. Sara walked alongside, one hand gripping the rail as though keeping Mia anchored in the world. Inside the bay, the bright ceiling light hummed overhead. Machines waited along the walls like silent witnesses. Noah snapped on gloves and nodded to Jenkins. "Monitor and oxygen." Leads were placed on Mia's small chest. The monitor blinked awake, its green numbers flashing low oxygen levels. Sara felt her stomach tighten. Jenkins fitted a clear mask connected to hissing oxygen over Mia's mouth and nose. Her daughter flinched, then relaxed slightly as cool air flowed in. "Her sats are low," Jenkins murmured. "I know," Noah said, stethoscope already on Mia's ribs. "Breathe deep if you can, sweetheart." The wheeze that answered was tight, high-pitched, and terrifying. Noah's brow furrowed. "We need nebulized albuterol and steroids. Immediately." As Jenkins prepared the nebulizer, Sara gripped the side of the bed. "Is she going to be okay?" she whispered. "We're treating her," Noah said without looking up. "You got her here before her lungs shut down. That matters." He replaced the oxygen mask with a nebulizer mask. Mist swirled inside it like a tiny storm. Mia's breaths were still rapid, but each one drew in a little deeper than before. Sara's voice cracked. "I should have brought her sooner. I shouldn't have waited. I didn't know what else to do. They told me to go to the clinic. If you had waited until morning," Noah said gently, "she might not have made it here. You made the right call." Minutes passed, heavy and strange. The hiss of the nebulizer filled the air. The monitor's numbers climbed. Not perfect, but no longer frighteningly low. Mia's shoulders moved less desperately. Sara's knees weakened with relief. She rested her forehead on the bed's edge, breathing in sync with her daughter. Then a soft rustle of the curtain. A woman in a dark blazer stood just outside. Reynolds, administration. Beside her was another doctor, older, expression tight. "Dr. Carter," Reynolds said quietly. "We need a word." Noah squeezed Sara's shoulder briefly. "I'll be right here." But his voice stayed close enough for Sara to hear through the thin curtain. "You admitted another uninsured patient under the emergency fund," Reynolds began, tone controlled. "We discussed this. The fund is nearly depleted. She's a 5-year-old in respiratory distress," Noah replied. "This fund exists for emergencies. This is one." The older doctor sighed. "We know what happened with your brother, but you can't let that determine every borderline case." Sara froze, guilt blooming hot in her chest. "This is because of us. Because I couldn't sign a form." "You're talking about budgets," Noah said steadily. "I'm talking about a child who could have stopped breathing on our doorstep." Papers shuffled. "We'll revisit this at the community forum," Reynolds said. "Until then, there will be consequences." Their footsteps faded. Noah returned, curtain swaying. He checked Mia's chest and the monitor again. "She's responding, but she's still fragile. We'll transfer her upstairs to the pediatric floor. Attacks like this can flare again. She needs to be close to oxygen and treatments." The words transfer and pediatric floor hit Sara like new weights. "I don't know how I'll pay for any of this," she whispered. "That's not tonight's problem," Noah said firmly. "My job is to keep her breathing." Jenkins returned with a portable monitor and a small pediatric bed. Working together, she and Noah gently moved Mia, keeping the cannula and leads in place. Sara stayed on one side of the rolling bed as they pushed it through the ER. The hallway looked different now, less like a wall closing in, more like a path forward. As they reached the elevators, Mia stirred, fingers curling loosely around her bunny. Her chest rose in slower, steadier movements. Sara brushed a kiss onto her daughter's temple. The elevator doors opened. Sara stepped inside with Mia and Noah. The ER hummed behind them, still bright, still noisy. But they were moving away from the cold rain, away from the sidewalk where she had thought she might lose her child. Upstairs, a longer fight waited, but they weren't fighting alone anymore. The pediatric floor was quieter than the ER. Lights dimmed, voices softer. The storm outside reduced to a gentle tapping against the windows. As the elevator doors slid open, Sara stepped out beside the rolling pediatric bed, one hand gripping the rail, the other resting lightly on Mia's foot under the blanket. Even with the oxygen tubing in place, her daughter's breaths were quicker than normal, but no longer frantic. A nurse in lavender scrubs greeted them. "Room 412, we'll take good care of her." She guided them into a small room with a single bed, a tall monitor, and a window streaked with rain. A painted mural of floating balloons covered the far wall, bright and out of place in the midnight hush. "Let's switch her to low-flow oxygen," Noah said, as he moved around the bed. He checked the readout on Mia's portable monitor, then helped the nurse replace the ER mask with a thin nasal cannula. 2 small loops of tubing framed Mia's cheeks. Her chest still rose quickly, but each inhale sounded less strained. Sara eased into the plastic chair beside the bed, exhaustion pulling her downward like gravity. Her clothes were still wet from the storm, the ends of her hair dripping onto her sleeves. She didn't care. She only watched Mia's small fingers twitch around the worn ear of her bunny. The nurse dimmed the lights. "If she needs another nebulizer, the machine's in the cabinet. We'll check on her often." When the door clicked shut, a heavy quiet wrapped around the room. The steady beep of the monitor marked seconds like slow heartbeats. Rain tapped a gentle rhythm on the glass. Sara opened her bag with trembling hands. Inside was a pack of crackers, a few coins, and Mia's drawing, creased from being shoved inside so fast. She unfolded it. A crooked rainbow stretched across a sky of scribbled blue. 2 stick figures, Mom and MIA, standing beneath it, holding hands. On the corner, the gray bunny floated like a tiny guardian. She traced the rainbow with her thumb. "You're going to be okay, baby," she whispered. "We're still here." "That counts." The door opened softly. Noah stepped in, coat unbuttoned, fatigue softening the corners of his eyes. He didn't speak at first. He checked Mia's vitals, listened to her lungs with his stethoscope, then finally exhaled slowly. "Her air movement is better," he said. "Not perfect, but better." Sara nodded, relief and worry tangling together. "Thank you for coming outside. I know you didn't have to." Noah leaned back against the counter, arms loosely crossed. "I heard her breathing from halfway down the hall," he said. I knew what that sound meant. A hesitation passed before he added quietly, "My brother sounded like that." Sara stiffened, remembering the sharp words she overheard through the curtain. "We know what happened with your brother." She waited. Noah stared at the rain-streaked window as he spoke. "His name was Daniel. He had asthma too. One night he had a bad attack, and our insurance had just changed. My mom took him to an ER. They argued about authorization and coverage before treating him." His jaw tightened slightly. He didn't get the minutes he needed. A deep ache spread through Sara's chest. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I became a doctor because I couldn't stand the idea of another kid being delayed by a form." Noah looked at her then, eyes steady. "So when I see a child gasping for air, I don't check boxes first." Mia stirred, eyelids fluttering. Her fingers brushed Noah's ID badge. "No, she whispered, half asleep. "Boatman." A faint smile cracked across his face. "Yes, like the boatman." He unclipped his badge and placed it gently into her small hand. "You can hold on to this tonight," he said softly. "When you're breathing strong again, you give it back." Sara watched, something warm and sharp tightening behind her ribs. "She'll love that," she murmured. Noah straightened. "Get some rest if you can. It's been a long night." She wanted to tell him rest felt impossible, that fear vibrated in her bones, but she only nodded. After he left, the room settled into a fragile calm. Minutes later, a soft knock came. A woman stepped in, badge reading Rosa Alvarez, social work. "Ms. Lane?" she asked gently. I'm here to talk about support programs and about what happened downstairs. Sara's shoulders tensed, knowing this night wasn't over yet. She looked at Mia, breathing steadier, the badge clasped in her tiny hand, and then back at Rosa. I can talk, she whispered. Just tell me where to start. And for the first time in hours, the fear didn't swallow her voice. Morning crept into room 412 in soft gray light. The storm had finally tapered into a drizzle, leaving streaks on the window like faded brushstrokes. Sara woke with a stiff neck and the imprint of the plastic chair pressed into her back. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she heard the quiet beep of the monitor and saw Mia curled on her side, Bunny tucked under her chin, breath slow and steady. A deep, shaky exhale escaped her. Mia's cheeks had lost the frightening flush. The nasal cannula still looped over her ears, but her breaths no longer fought for space. Noah's ID badge rested on the blanket near her hand, its metal clip glinting faintly. Sara smoothed her daughter's hair, then slipped into the hallway. She needed water, something to steady the jumble inside her chest. The pediatric floor was calmer in daylight. Nurses updated charts. A cartoon murmured from a nearby room, and someone down the hall laughed quietly with a patient. Sara found the family lounge, filled a paper cup, and took a long drink. As she turned to leave, a muffled voice drifted from a doorway with a crooked sign taped above it. Staff meeting closed. She didn't mean to stop, but then she heard Noah's name. Carter admitted another uninsured patient using the emergency fund, said Reynolds. The same firm voice Sara remembered from the hallway. Another voice replied, exasperated. We can't keep doing this. Charity funds don't replenish themselves. Sara froze. Noah's voice came next, steady but tight. A child couldn't breathe. Are we really debating whether I should have waited? You're letting past trauma dictate your decisions, another doctor said. This isn't sustainable. The words hit Sara like a weight. This is about us, she realized, stomach twisting. Reynolds spoke again, quieter this time. The hospital board wants answers. We can't keep stretching a fund that's nearly empty. Something scraped, maybe a chair. And then Noah said sharply, You won't catch me apologizing for saving a little girl's life. Silence followed. Then Reynolds sighed. There will be discussions at the forum next week. Until then, be mindful of your choices, Carter. Footsteps shifted. Sara darted away from the door before anyone emerged, her pulse thudding in her ears. He's in trouble. Because of me. Because I couldn't sign a form. Back in the room, Sara sank into the chair beside Mia, pressing her palms together until they hurt. She had come hoping for help, not to cost someone their job. A soft knock sounded. Rosa stepped in, holding a clipboard and a warm, understanding expression. How's Mia this morning? Better, Sara whispered. Because of him. Rosa nodded, then sat. I'm here to talk about next week's community forum. The hospital wants to address how uninsured patients are treated, especially cases like yours. Sara looked down at her hands. I heard them, she murmured. They might punish him. I don't want that. Rosa's voice softened. You didn't put him in that position. The system did. She placed a brochure on the table. The forum is a chance to tell your story, not to blame anyone, just to let people understand what it feels like on the other side of the counter. Sara stared at the rainbow drawing she had brought from home. Mom and MIA, smiling under thick crayon colors. Why me? She asked. I'm not special. I'm just broke, trying my best. That's exactly why, Rosa said gently. Most families who struggle never speak up. Their stories get buried under paperwork. Yours could help change something. Sara swallowed hard. What would I even say? Start with the truth, Rosa said. What it felt like when someone told you to come back at 8. What it meant when a doctor stepped into the rain for your child. A knock broke their conversation. Noah entered, coat sleeves rolled up, chart in hand. His eyes flicked briefly to Sara, maybe checking if she had slept, maybe checking if she was still holding herself together. Mia's lungs sound much better, he said after listening. She might go home tomorrow morning if she keeps improving. Sara nodded slowly. I heard the meeting, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. They're upset with you. Noah sighed, the weariness catching up to him. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. I don't want you getting punished for helping us, she said, guilt twisting her. He shook his head. You didn't put me at risk. Systems don't change unless someone pushes. If it has to be me, fine. I can handle it. Sara looked at Rosa, then back at Noah. Rosa wants me to talk at the forum. Noah's eyebrows lifted, surprised but hopeful. If you do, people will listen. The decision lodged in her throat, heavy and terrifying. But then she glanced at Mia, breathing peacefully, clutching his badge like a tiny lifeline. And something inside her finally settled. Okay, she whispered. I'll speak. Not for herself, for every mother still standing outside under the rain. The following week arrived faster than Sara expected. One moment she was filling out discharge papers and learning Mia's new asthma plan, and the next she was standing in the hospital restroom before the community forum, staring at her own reflection, as if trying to recognize the woman looking back. Her fingers kept smoothing the paper name tag pinned awkwardly to her blouse. Sara Lane, parent speaker. Behind her, Rosa Alvarez stood with a reassuring smile. Nervous? Sara let out a shaky laugh. Terrified. You're going to do fine, Rosa said. Just tell the truth. People can feel the truth. Sara inhaled deeply, nodded, and followed Rosa out. Harborview's community hall felt intimidating and official. Rows of chairs, warm lighting, a podium with the hospital's logo projected behind it. On one side sat nurses and doctors in scrubs. On the other, board members in suits. At the very back, a local news crew set up cameras. In the front row, Mia sat swinging her feet, bunny in one hand, Noah's old badge clipped proudly to her jacket. When she spotted Sara, she grinned wide enough to show the gap where her baby tooth had fallen out last month. Noah was standing near the aisle speaking with a few nurses. His tie was crooked as always, and his sleeves were rolled above his wrists. When he saw Sara approach, his expression softened. You made it. I almost turned around twice, she admitted. But you didn't, he said. That matters. Reynolds stepped up to the podium first. Thank you all for coming, she said with practiced calm. Today we address concerns regarding care for uninsured or underinsured patients. We're here to listen, learn, and discuss solutions. A slideshow followed. Graphs, budgets, words like uncompensated care, operational strain, projected deficits. Sara tried to understand, but her heart raced too loudly to absorb numbers. Then came the clinical perspective. Noah walked to the podium, shoulders squared not in confidence but in resolve. I'm an emergency physician, he began. When someone walks through those doors unable to breathe, I don't have time to think about policy. I treat the patient in front of me. A mother and a child are not line items. His voice stayed steady as he described a scenario, no names, of a little girl turned away in the storm. The room grew still. When we make families feel like they don't belong here, he continued, they stop coming until it's too late. A hospital without trust doesn't save lives. It spends them. When Noah stepped down, Rosa touched Sara's arm. Your turn. Hearing her name announced felt surreal. She climbed the 2 small steps to the stage, the microphone too tall until someone adjusted it. Dozens of faces blurred into one anxious mass of attention. Then she saw Mia in the front row, wiggling her fingers in encouragement. Sara held onto that tiny wave. My name is Sara, she began. I'm a single mom. Last week my daughter woke me up because she couldn't breathe. Her voice trembled, but she kept going. She described their apartment, the smell of detergent, the drafty windows, then losing her job, the day the insurance letter arrived, the nights she told herself the inhaler would be enough. I didn't come to the hospital because I wasn't trying, she said quietly. I didn't come because I was scared. Scared of a bill I couldn't pay. Scared of being judged. The room stayed painfully still. And when I finally did come, she continued, I was told to come back in the morning. My little girl was gasping in my arms and I was told to wait 8 hours. She swallowed hard, but her voice steadied. I'm not asking for special treatment. I know hospitals need money, but at that moment I didn't need an estimate. I needed someone to put a stethoscope on my child's chest. A soft murmur rippled through the staff section. Sara glanced toward Noah. He gave a small nod. You're doing it. When Dr. Carter came outside in the rain, she said, he didn't ask for cards or forms. He listened to my daughter breathe, and that's all it took to save her. Emotion trembled in her voice, but she didn't look away. I'm speaking today because I don't want the next mom to need a miracle. I want her to walk through those doors and be seen, really seen. She stepped back. Her hands were shaking, but she felt strangely lighter. Noah returned to the stage beside her, not to speak over her, but to stand with her. We've been developing a proposal, he said. A fund dedicated to emergency care for children and caregivers without upfront ability to pay. Staff supported, community supported, transparent. We're calling it the Open Door Fund. A hush swept the room. Reynolds returned to the podium, her expression softer than earlier. This proposal aligns with discussions the board has already begun. She looked at Sara, then Noah. Today we commit to formally creating the Open Door Fund, and Mia Lane's case will be the first covered under its umbrella. For a moment, nobody moved. Then applause rose, slow then stronger, spreading across the room. Mia jumped up from her chair, clapping with both hands. Her bunny flopped wildly, and Sara felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. 2 weeks after the forum, the evening news flickered across the small TV in Sara's apartment. The picture was slightly grainy, but the headline running along the bottom was unmistakable. Harborview launches the Open Door Fund. On screen, the reporter stood outside the hospital entrance, the red emergency sign glowing behind her. Then footage from the forum appeared. Sara at the podium, hands trembling slightly, her voice steady as she said, I didn't need an estimate. I needed someone to put a stethoscope on my child's chest. Mia, cross-legged on the couch in pajamas and holding her bunny, squealed, Mom, that's you! Sara covered her face, laughing from embarrassment and disbelief. Yes, that's me. Now finish your apple slices. Life wasn't suddenly easy, but it was steadier. The bakery where she worked had offered her a reliable morning schedule, and she could pick Mia up from school without begging for shift changes. More importantly, Mia now had a real asthma management plan. The purple folder they'd received from the clinic, daily inhaler schedule, triggers to avoid, emergency instructions, was magneted to the fridge beside her rainbow drawing. That afternoon, the two of them walked hand in hand toward Harborview for a follow-up appointment. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets smelling like wet concrete and salt from the harbor. The hospital entrance looked different, familiar, but marked by something new. Next to the sliding doors, beneath the glowing red emergency sign, a polished plaque had been installed. Open Door Fund, emergency care for children and caregivers. Community supported, hospital matched. Sara traced the engraved letters with her fingertips. It's real, she whispered. Inside, a small crowd had formed in the lobby around a newly created kids' corner. Where empty chairs once sat, there were shelves of picture books, a tiny table with crayons, and a set of toy doctor kits. A sign hung above, Open Door Kids Corner, made possible by your community. A volunteer pointed children toward a table where bubbles popped and crayons rolled. Mia tugged her mother's sleeve. Can I color before we see Dr. Noah? If you stay where I can see you, Sara said. Mia dashed off, bunny tucked under her arm. Noah emerged from an office across the lobby, white coat unbuttoned, a coffee he'd probably forgotten to drink cooling in his hand. When he spotted them, a smile warmed his tired eyes. You two are becoming regulars, he said. We come with less dramatic entrances now, Sara replied. Mia ran back and threw her arms around his legs. Dr. Noah, look! I can breathe without the tube thing. He crouched to her level, listening to her take a deep, exaggerated breath. That's excellent air, he said. Clinic plan working? Sara nodded. Better than I expected. Mia tugged on his coat. I have something for you. She unhooked his old badge, the one he'd let her borrow that terrifying night, and pressed it back into his hand with great ceremony. I'm strong now, so I don't need it. Noah looked genuinely moved. Then I guess I need to give you something too. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small round tag on a blue lanyard. On one side, engraved letters read, "Open door, always for you." On the other, a tiny stethoscope curled into a heart. Mia gasped as if it were a treasure from a storybook. "For me? You earned it," he said softly. "Keep it as long as you want." Sara swallowed past a tight warmth in her chest. The tag was simple, inexpensive even, but the message behind it felt enormous. Later, while Mia colored in the kids' corner, Sara stood beside Noah near the new plaque. "You really changed this place," she said. Noah shook his head. "You did. Your voice shifted the conversation more than any memo I've sent." "I was terrified," she admitted. "Most people who change things are," he said. "But you did it anyway." As they talked, a woman rushed through the ER doors holding a toddler wrapped in a blanket, breath hitching in panic. Sara watched as a triage nurse immediately stepped forward, not with a clipboard, but with an oxygen mask. A respiratory therapist was already jogging over. No hesitation. Sara exhaled slowly. "That didn't happen before." "No," Noah agreed. "But it will now." Mia returned with a picture, a scribble of balloons and a building with a glowing red sign. Over it, with crooked letters, she'd written, "Thank you for the open door." Sara felt her eyes sting. She squeezed Mia's hand, then smiled at Noah. If this were a video, the final shot would be the ER doors sliding open again, not closing. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Midus Stories. Because sometimes a story is the very thing that opens someone else's door when their night feels too dark.